Think you know everything about bizarre sports movies? This 1979 disco basketball disaster starring Dr. J hides secrets stranger than its astrology-based plot, from an NBA legend's violent chair-throwing tantrum that got him fired to a future Hall of Fame coach appearing as a dribbling child, plus the Pittsburgh mayor's desperate plea that saved production from total collapse. Fact 1. Kareem's chair-throwing meltdown got him fired. One of the most shocking behind-the-scenes moments in The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh involved NBA legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar getting fired from the production in a way that nobody saw coming. Kareem was supposed to play a significant role in the film's climactic basketball game, appearing as himself on the opposing Los Angeles team. However, his time on set came to an abrupt and violent end that left the cast and crew stunned. According to Julius Erving, who revealed the story in 2013, the incident happened when Kareem sat down in director of photography Frank Stanley's chair during a break in filming. When Stanley politely asked Kareem if he could have his seat back, the 7'2" basketball star didn't take the request well. Instead of simply getting up and apologizing, Kareem responded by grabbing the chair and hurling it across the basketball court in an explosive fit of anger. The incident was serious enough that the filmmakers immediately fired Kareem from the production, and he never returned to complete his scenes. This explains one of the film's strangest mysteries that writer Bill Simmons noticed in his book, The Book of Basketball. Simmons pointed out that Kareem mysteriously vanishes from the fourth quarter of the climactic game without any explanation. Before Erving came forward with the truth, there were only rumors and speculation about what happened. Some people thought Kareem had to leave because the shooting schedule ran too long and he couldn't return. Others believed he found out Julius Erving was being paid more money than him and angrily walked off the set. But the real story turned out to be far more dramatic and bizarre than anyone imagined, involving nothing more than a simple request for a chair that escalated into a career-ending moment for Kareem's brief acting career in this particular film. Fact 2. Future coaching legend's childhood cameo. If you watch The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh closely, you'll spot a brief appearance by a young boy who would grow up to become one of college basketball's most successful coaches. During one of the open tryout scenes in the film, a 10-year-old kid appears for just a few seconds, showing off his incredible ball handling skills by dribbling 3 basketballs at the same time. That child was Sean Miller, a Pittsburgh native who would eventually become the head coach at the University of Arizona, and later at Xavier University. Miller was already something of a local legend in the Pittsburgh area by the time he appeared in the film, which was released in 1979. He had developed remarkable dribbling abilities at an exceptionally young age, performing at basketball camps throughout the Northeast and putting on exhibitions that left audiences amazed. His skills were so impressive that they caught the attention of talent scouts beyond the sports world. Just 4 years after his brief movie appearance, at the age of 14, Miller was invited to perform his dribbling tricks on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, which was the biggest platform in entertainment at that time. Miller's basketball journey continued long after his childhood fame as a dribbling prodigy. He played college basketball at the University of Pittsburgh from 1987 to 1992, where he became known more for his basketball intelligence and leadership than his physical abilities. After his playing career ended, he transitioned into coaching and became one of the most respected names in college basketball. His cameo in The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh remains a fun piece of trivia that connects his childhood talents to his later success, showing that even as a young kid, he was destined to make his mark on the basketball world in some way. Fact 3. Co-stars married without meeting on set. The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh brought together an unlikely couple who would build one of Hollywood's most enduring marriages, even though they never shared a single scene together in the film. Actress and choreographer Debbie Allen and Los Angeles Lakers point guard Norman Nixon both appeared in the 1979 movie, but their paths crossed off camera rather than on it, leading to a love story that has lasted more than 4 decades. Allen had a supporting role in the film and also worked as a choreographer for some of the movie's dance sequences, while Nixon played one of the basketball players on screen. Despite being part of the same production, they didn't have any scenes together, but they met during filming in Pittsburgh and quickly became friends. Nixon later recalled that the timing wasn't quite right for romance during the shoot because they were both focused on their careers. After filming wrapped, Allen moved to New York to work on the television show Fame, which would make her a household name, while Nixon returned to Los Angeles to continue his career with the Lakers. The two stayed in touch over the following years, and Nixon eventually realized that he enjoyed spending time with Allen more than anyone else he was dating. Their friendship gradually developed into something deeper, and they tied the knot on April 27, 1984, exactly 5 years after the movie was released. The couple has remained together ever since, celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary in 2024. They have 2 children together and co-founded the Debbie Allen Dance Academy in 2001. Allen has often credited their strong friendship as the foundation of their lasting marriage, proving that sometimes the best relationships start without any Hollywood script. Fact 4. Cher dodged this disco disaster. The role of Mona Mon Dieu, the quirky astrologer who helped save the Pittsburgh basketball team, almost went to one of the biggest stars in entertainment at the time. Cher, fresh off her success in the movie Grease and riding high as a music and television icon, was originally cast to play the central female character in The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. However, she made the decision to withdraw from the project at the last minute, citing scheduling conflicts that prevented her from committing to the production. When Cher backed out, the filmmakers needed to find a replacement quickly, and they turned to Stockard Channing, who had just finished playing the memorable role of Rizzo in Grease, alongside Cher's co-stars. Channing stepped into the part and brought her own unique energy to the character of Mona Mon Dieu, playing the flighty but well-meaning astrologer with a giddy and vivacious performance that fit the film's disco-era sensibility. While it's impossible to know exactly how Cher would have interpreted the role, many fans and critics have suggested that Channing was actually a better fit for the character because she brought a more grounded quality to the spaciness of the astrologer. Looking back, Cher's decision to pass on the film turned out to be fortuitous for her career. The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh was a box office disappointment when it was released in 1979, and it received largely negative reviews from critics who found the plot ridiculous and the execution lacking. While the movie eventually gained a cult following decades later thanks to its funky soundtrack and nostalgic appeal, Cher avoided being associated with what was considered a commercial and critical failure at the time of its release. Fact 5. Pittsburgh's mayor saved the movie from collapse. The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh came dangerously close to abandoning Pittsburgh entirely during production, and it took an unprecedented intervention from the city's mayor to keep the cameras rolling. The filmmakers needed to shoot several basketball game scenes at the Civic Arena that required thousands of extras over multiple days to make the crowd scenes look authentic and exciting. However, when the production team put out the call for unpaid volunteers to fill the arena, they faced a serious problem that threatened to derail the entire shoot. Despite all the publicity and radio advertisements asking locals to participate, not enough people showed up to create the illusion of a packed stadium. The producers found themselves in a panic as they looked at the sparse attendance and realized they couldn't film convincing crowd scenes with so few extras. They began seriously considering relocating the production to other cities, and they even received offers from Baltimore, Maryland, and Cleveland, Ohio, where officials promised they could deliver the crowds the movie needed. Rather than lose the economic benefits and prestige of having a major Hollywood production in the city, Pittsburgh's mayor stepped in with a bold move. He held a press conference where he made a direct appeal to the citizens of Pittsburgh, asking them to come out and support the filming by serving as extras in the movie. The mayor's public plea worked beyond anyone's expectations, and attendance at the fictional basketball games suddenly soared, with locals flooding into the Civic Arena to be part of the production. The mayor even appeared in the film himself in a cameo role, shaking hands with Julius Erving's character at a rally scene, cementing his personal investment in making sure this movie stayed in Pittsburgh. Fact 6. Flip Wilson's final theatrical film. The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh holds a bittersweet place in entertainment history as the final theatrical film appearance of legendary comedian Flip Wilson, though nobody knew it would be his swan song at the time. Wilson played Coach Jock Delaney, the frustrated coach of the struggling Pittsburgh Pythons who walks out on the team early in the film alongside most of the disgruntled players. This small supporting role would be the last time audiences would see Wilson on the big screen before his death from liver cancer in 1998 at the age of 64. For those unfamiliar with Wilson's impact on entertainment, he was a groundbreaking figure in American comedy and television. From 1970 to 1974, he hosted The Flip Wilson Show, which made him the first African-American to host a successful variety series on network television. Time magazine even featured him on their cover in January of 1972 with the headline calling him television's first black superstar. He was famous for creating memorable characters like Reverend Leroy and Geraldine, whose catchphrase, "The devil made me do it," became part of popular culture. After The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, Wilson continued to work in television throughout the 1980s and 90s, making guest appearances on shows and even hosting Saturday Night Live in 1983. However, he never returned to theatrical films, making this disco-era basketball comedy his unintentional farewell to cinema. While the movie itself was not a critical or commercial success, Wilson's presence added legitimacy and star power to the production, connecting the film to the golden age of 1970s variety television that he helped define. Fact 7. Thom Bell's disco soundtrack was never released. The soundtrack to The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh brought together some of the biggest names in soul and disco music, yet it became one of the most difficult albums to find for nearly 4 decades. Legendary producer Thom Bell, who was one of the architects of the Philadelphia soul sound and had worked with artists like the Stylistics and the Delphonics, composed his very first film score for this movie. He assembled an incredible lineup of talent, including the Spinners, the Four Tops, the Silvers, and Phyllis Hyman, and even brought in country music superstar Loretta Lynn and 92-year-old ragtime legend Eubie Blake for good measure. Bell wrote, produced, arranged, and conducted every song on the album, creating a funky disco soundtrack that perfectly captured the late 1970s vibe. However, when the movie crashed at the box office in 1979, the soundtrack went down with it. The album was released on vinyl, but sold so poorly that it quickly disappeared from stores and never made it to any other format. For decades, the only way to hear these songs was to track down one of the rare original vinyl copies, which became highly sought after by collectors and soundtrack enthusiasts. The situation was so dire that when the movie gained a cult following through VHS releases in the 1980s and 90s, fans still couldn't buy the soundtrack in any modern format. It wasn't until February of 2017 that Real Gone Music and Second Disc Records finally released the soundtrack on CD for the very first time, a full 38 years after the movie premiered. The reissue included newly remastered audio and 3 rare bonus tracks, finally giving this lost piece of disco history a second chance. Fact 8. The movie novel had different endings. Like many movies from the 1970s, The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh received a novelization that was released alongside the film, but this book version tells a surprisingly different story in several key ways. Author Richard Woodley wrote the novel based on an early draft of the screenplay by Jason Starks and Edmund Stevens, which means he was working from a version of the story that changed significantly by the time filming was completed. The result is a book that shares the same basic premise, but diverges in important details that change the tone of the whole narrative. The most notable difference involves the team's winning streak. In the final film, once the astrologically compatible Pittsburgh Pisces are assembled, they become unstoppable and win every single game on their path to the championship. However, in the novel version, the team actually loses 2 games during their season, making their journey more realistic but less magical. This change suggests the filmmakers decided to lean harder into the fantasy elements of the astrology gimmick, working perfectly, rather than showing any flaws in the system. The novel also includes a bizarre scene that was filmed but didn't make it into the theatrical release. Woodley describes a sequence where a group of people in wheelchairs cause havoc and disruption at one of the Pisces games, creating chaos in the arena. This scene actually appears in the movie's preview trailer, proving it was shot and considered for inclusion at some point during editing. Why the filmmakers ultimately decided to cut this sequence remains unclear, but its presence in both the trailer and the novel shows it was once an important part of the story before being left on the cutting room floor. Fact 9. Fish-shaped hot air balloon through retractable roof. The climactic championship game in The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh features one of the strangest team entrance sequences ever filmed, taking full advantage of the unique architectural features of the Pittsburgh Civic Arena. Before the decisive 7th game against Los Angeles, the arena's massive retractable roof slowly opens to reveal the sky above, and the hometown Pittsburgh Pisces descend from the heavens inside a hot air balloon basket that's shaped like a giant fish, floating down through the opening while the crowd goes wild. This spectacle was only possible because the Civic Arena was the world's first major indoor sports stadium to feature a retractable roof. The arena, which locals affectionately called the Igloo, had a dome that was divided into 8 sections across its 415-foot diameter, with 6 of those stainless steel segments able to slide underneath 2 mounted pieces in just 2.5 minutes. The roof's ability to open was actually the result of a demand from Edgar Kaufman, the department store magnate who helped finance the building, because he wanted to watch Civic light opera performances under the stars without sitting in the rain. The filmmakers recognized this architectural marvel as a perfect opportunity for a memorable scene that would showcase both the arena and their movie's aquatic theme. However, the logistics of this entrance raised some amusing questions that the movie never addresses. The players had to somehow climb out of the balloon basket and get ready to play while the balloon was dealt with, and somebody had to either collapse it and drag it off the court or fly it back up through the still open roof before the game could begin, which must have delayed the tip-off considerably. Fact 10. Pittsburgh's championship year coincidence. The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh couldn't have been released at a more perfect time for its theme of Pittsburgh sports glory, as 1979 turned out to be one of the greatest years in the city's athletic history. The movie hit theaters in November of 1979, right in the middle of a remarkable 12-month period when Pittsburgh's professional sports teams dominated their respective leagues in a way that few cities have ever experienced. The championship run began in January of 1979 when the Pittsburgh Steelers defeated the Dallas Cowboys to win Super Bowl 13, claiming their 3rd NFL championship of the decade. Then, just as the movie was being released in theaters that fall, the Pittsburgh Pirates defeated the Baltimore Orioles in October to win the World Series, giving the Iowa City 2 major championships in the same calendar year. This wasn't just a lucky coincidence either, as Pittsburgh had been building a reputation throughout the entire 1970s as the City of Champions, with the Steelers winning 4 Super Bowls during the decade in 1975, 1976, 1979, and 1980, while the Pirates also won the World Series in 1971. The timing meant that Pittsburgh audiences were experiencing genuine championship fever when they went to see a fictional movie about a struggling Pittsburgh basketball team that rises from last place to win it all. The film's story of hometown triumph and underdog victory resonated with the actual victories happening in real life, even though the movie itself didn't perform well at the box office. The synchronicity between the film's release and Pittsburgh's actual sports dominance gave the movie an extra layer of relevance that the filmmakers couldn't have planned better if they tried. Fact 11. $4 million budget injected into Pittsburgh economy. The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh represented much more than just a movie production for the city of Pittsburgh, as it became a significant economic event that pumped millions of dollars directly into the local economy. The entire film was shot on location in Pittsburgh and the nearby suburb of Moon Township, with a total production budget of $4 million, which was a substantial amount for a comedy film in the late 1970s. According to estimates from the time, roughly half of that budget, approximately $2 million, was spent locally during the filming process. This economic injection came at an important time for Pittsburgh, which was transitioning away from its traditional steel industry identity and looking for new ways to diversify its economy and improve its image. The production brought jobs to local crew members, paid for permits and location fees, hired local extras by the thousands, rented equipment from area suppliers, and kept cast and crew members housed and fed in Pittsburgh hotels and restaurants for the duration of the shoot. The filming took place over several weeks in the late summer and early fall of 1978, with the scheduled completion date set for September 19th of that year. Beyond the immediate financial impact, the production also provided Pittsburgh with valuable exposure as a filming location, showcasing the city's distinctive skyline, bridges, and landmarks to audiences who might not have been familiar with the city beyond its industrial reputation. The production at the Civic Arena alone required massive coordination and resources, filming basketball game sequences over multiple days with thousands of extras filling the seats. This kind of major Hollywood production demonstrated that Pittsburgh could serve as a viable alternative to traditional filming locations, potentially attracting future productions to the area. Fact 12. ABC edited. 8 minutes for TV premiere. When The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh made its network television debut on ABC in 1982, viewers who had seen the theatrical version might have noticed that something was different about what they were watching. The network made the decision to edit out a full 8 minutes of content from the original film before broadcasting it to audiences across the country, reducing the runtime significantly from its theatrical length of 1 hour and 42 minutes. What makes this editing decision particularly intriguing is that nobody seems to know exactly what content ABC found objectionable enough to remove. The original film carried a PG rating, which meant it was considered appropriate for general audiences with parental guidance, so it wasn't filled with explicit content that would obviously need cutting for television. The movie contains some mild language, disco-era fashion choices, and a few suggestive moments, but nothing that stands out as particularly shocking or inappropriate by the standards of early 1980s network television. The mystery deepens when you consider that 8 minutes is a substantial amount of material to cut from a comedy film without severely impacting the story's flow and pacing. That's not just trimming a few questionable lines here and there, but removing entire scenes or significantly shortening multiple sequences throughout the movie. Whether ABC was concerned about language, some of the more revealing costumes worn by dancers and cheerleaders, innuendo in the dialogue, or simply needed to make room for commercial breaks remains unclear. Film historians and fans of the movie have speculated about what might have been removed, but without access to ABC's internal notes from the editing process, the specific content that was deemed unsuitable for broadcast television continues to be a puzzle. Fact 13. Continuity error with jewelry store. Even though The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh was shot entirely on location in Pittsburgh to showcase the city's authentic streets and landmarks, the filmmakers weren't quite careful enough during one crucial chase sequence. During a scene where Mona Mondieu, played by Stockard Channing, is racing through downtown Pittsburgh to get to the big game, eagle-eyed viewers who know the city well can spot an obvious continuity error that somehow made it past the editing process and into the final cut of the film. As Mona speeds through the streets in her rush to reach the arena, the camera shows her car driving past Kappel's jewelry store, which was located on Liberty Avenue near the corner with 5th Avenue in downtown Pittsburgh. This would be perfectly fine except for one problem. Just moments later in the same continuous sequence, her car passes by the exact same Kappel's jewelry store again from the same angle. Unless Mona decided to drive in circles or the jewelry store somehow duplicated itself, this is clearly a mistake in how the shots were assembled during editing. This type of continuity error is actually quite common in movies that feature driving or chase sequences, especially when filming on real city streets where it's difficult to maintain complete control over the route and shooting conditions. The editors likely had limited footage to work with and needed to create a sense of urgency and movement, so they used the best shots they had available, even if it meant showing the same landmark twice. For Pittsburgh locals watching the movie, this mistake would have been immediately noticeable and probably got a few laughs, but for everyone else unfamiliar with the city's geography, it probably went completely unnoticed. Fact 14, Dr. J's character name wasn't about Moses Malone. Over the years, basketball fans watching The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh have often assumed that Julius Erving's character name of Moses Guthrie was a clever reference to Moses Malone, another legendary NBA player who would become Erving's teammate on the Philadelphia 76ers. The connection seems to make sense at first glance, especially since both players went on to win an NBA championship together in 1983, leading many viewers to believe the filmmakers were making an inside joke or prediction about their future partnership. However, this popular interpretation is completely wrong based on simple timeline facts. When The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh was filmed in 1978 and released in 1979, Julius Erving was playing for the Philadelphia 76ers, while Moses Malone was playing for the Houston Rockets. The two players wouldn't become teammates until 1982 when the 76ers acquired Malone in a trade, which was a full 4 years after the movie was made. There's no way the screenwriters or filmmakers could have known that these two players would end up on the same team in the future, so any connection between the character's name and Moses Malone is purely coincidental. The character name Moses Guthrie was simply chosen by the writers without any hidden meaning or connection to real NBA players. It's a good example of how fans sometimes read deeper meaning into coincidences, creating connections that were never intended by the creators. The fact that both Moses happened to team up years later and win a championship together is just one of those strange instances where fiction accidentally predicted reality, but it wasn't part of any grand plan by the filmmakers. Fact 15. The film gained cult status through hip-hop. The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh may have been a commercial disaster when it first hit theaters in 1979, but the movie found an unexpected second life decades later thanks to hip-hop producers who discovered the film's funky soundtrack. While the movie itself struggled to find an audience during its initial release and quickly faded from public consciousness, the music created by Tom Bell and performed by artists like the Spinners, the Four Tops, and the Silvers contained exactly the kind of grooves that hip-hop producers were constantly searching for in their quest to find fresh samples. Starting in the 1990s and continuing into the 2000s, hip-hop artists began digging through obscure funk and soul records, looking for beats and musical elements they could sample and incorporate into new songs. The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh soundtrack became a treasure trove for these producers because it featured professional musicians playing live instruments with the kind of analog warmth and rhythmic complexity that's difficult to recreate digitally. The tracks had funky bass lines, crisp drum breaks, and smooth horn arrangements that fit perfectly into hip-hop production techniques. As more and more hip-hop songs featuring samples from the soundtrack started appearing, younger listeners who had never heard of the movie began seeking out the original source material. This led them to discover the film itself through VHS tapes and later DVD releases, creating a new generation of fans who appreciated the movie's campy charm, disco aesthetic, and authentic 1970s vibe. The film transformed from a forgotten box office failure into a cult classic, with fans celebrating its so bad it's good qualities and its status as a time capsule of late 70s culture, all because hip-hop artists recognized the value in its groovy soundtrack.